The following BLTV program is brought to you by O'Flaherty Law. Please enjoy.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining another Seize Your Business podcast. My name is Bryan McDonald from OnPurpos Growth. And today I have Brad McCrory of Accelerate on. And today what we're going to be talking about is tension in sales conversations and how you can use tension to your favor in sales conversations. So Brad, why don't you give a little bit of an introduction to yourself and your background, and then we'll dive in.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. I appreciate it. Yeah, so thanks for having me on the show. Again, Brad McCrory. My background really today, I run and operate Accelerate, or digital consultancy. But I really started off at 19 selling, and started back in 99, 2000, when there was still such a thing as phone books and yellow pages and hammering phones and pounding streets. And I don't know if today's sales generation understands what a road warrior is, but kind of went through all that and really just started realizing that as hard as I was willing to work, that what separated top performers across every industry and across every vertical and across every economy was learning how to work smart and work effectively, and that there was a certain set of skill sets and traits and tactics and methods to navigating sales conversations that created quality customer relationships, that set up customer conversations to make it easier for the operations or delivery side of product side of a company to deliver, and really have spent most of my professional career honing and evolving that skill set to make it easier for myself and for other people that I work with to win business that frankly they probably shouldn't be winning, selling out, punching up in their weight class.
Oh, awesome. So can you give a little bit of background on Accelerate? Because how long have you had Accelerate going?
Yeah, Accelerate's been in business for 4 years, almost 5 years actually, 4.5 years. And it's a digital consultancy, so we do a lot of business consulting. Companies come to us with what they typically find is a technology problem or a marketing problem, and it's usually a actual strategy process or people problem that needs to be fixed before the technology or the marketing piece can get solved. So it's a services organization, complex sales, typically dealing with complex business environments and business challenges in mid-level organizations, companies that are doing $20 million to $150 million in revenue.
Got it. Appreciate you sharing that. So, last time we talked, you mentioned you've grown this over that period of time to, I think, over 3 million in access and revenue. So I'm sure this whole topic of tensions in sales conversations has allowed you to get it there. So let's define, so we have an operational definition of what you mean by tension in sales conversations before we dive into the use of it.
Yeah, so it really is the best, kind of most simple, operational definition I can give it is going into a pitching business conversation and creating a friction within the conversation that allows the fastest path to controlling the sales conversation, which then allows the seller to immediately inject value from a position of authority. So it's a tactic or a strategy that I've evolved that allows the process to get to a point where you're actually able to consult and sell to be much shorter than if you're kind of organically developing a relationship over time.
Got it. So in your experience, why is that important to do?
It's interesting. That's a really good question. I think what we find today is that, and this, I'm not saying that anything that anybody listening doesn't understand, but it's just sometimes it's good to hear it again, but we're in a different market today, right? So today a buyer is an educated buyer before they enter in a sales conversation. 20 years ago, the cycle of buying started with maybe starting to identify some needs and putting it into a specification, and then going through some vendor qualifications, and then starting to have a conversation about what the business is trying to accomplish. And with the internet today, and with how fast information cycles work, that's just not the case anymore. People enter their buying cycle 50% of their way through the buying process. And so to get out in front of that and understand that buyers coming in, understanding your services and your competitors' services, and to be able to quickly position yourself at the lead of that conversation requires a more direct approach. And so really it's about understanding where the buyer's entering into the process, and finding a way to let the buyer know that you know as much or more about their business as they do, and you're the person to drive the most value for the business as quickly as possible.
Awesome. So let's put some meat on the bones of this and give some, I don't know if there's going to be some concrete examples because this is very conceptual, but let's put some meat on the bones for people to help them understand a little bit deeper on how you're doing this and your suggestions around it.
I'd love to. I can actually get pretty specific. So, it starts really with that selling conversation. And so in a first introductory meeting, my goal is in the first 90 seconds to 120 seconds of a meeting is to establish what I'll call authoritative control of the conversation, meaning both myself and the buyer understand that he can trust me, that I have an expertise, that I'm going to be able to drive value, not just the value that he needs me to drive or he or she needs me to drive, but I can uncover what I'll call hidden value that they haven't thought of yet to drive intangible value to the business conversation. And I can do that in a way that without ever mentioning the features, advantages, and benefits of my company. And so how that typically folds out is I'll go into a conversation, and to get very tactical is, we sell services, and if I'm going in to talk to somebody about a new website for their organization, I'll go into that first meeting having read the annual report from their executives, having looked through their social media, having looked at competitive analysis of how their competitors are using digital, understanding the funding and the business landscape of that organization. And it's not a conversation about a website, but it's a conversation about a transformation of the business. It's a conversation where I'm able to walk in and say, hey, Mr. CEO, I know that the ask was that you wanted to talk to us about a website, but in looking at your industry and in looking at your company and in looking at the structure of your organization, I think we really need to be focusing on problems A, B, and C before we get to the website. And that ability to shift the conversation to a place that drives intrinsic value that's greater than the conversation that the competitors are having is really what is separating us time and time again. Because our competitors, in most industries, people are still selling features, advantages, benefits. Here's who we are, here's the awards that we've won, here's the services we provide, come buy for us. But if you're leading a conversation to the point where you're literally reverse engineering the bottom line of the company into your product, features, advantages, and benefits oftentimes don't get brought up in the sales conversation at all.
That's pretty amazing, and it makes complete sense. So, how does the person on the other side of the table experience this? What do you think's going? What typically goes through their minds, or what type of reactions do you get from them when you handle a conversation this way?
The reaction question is the best one, because that's really the indicator of success. I look for a common reaction every single time, and the reaction I'm looking for is, and they'll tell me if I've pushed too much or I've pushed too little. The reaction I'm looking for is a inquisitive reaction that's something along the lines of, I haven't thought of that yet. So I'm not looking for, how dare you attack me in my business? And I'm not looking for, can you tell me more about your features? I'm looking for, you've got me thinking in some sort of variation. And the minute that's the response that you get at that point, that is an indicator, a dashboard light on the car speedometer, that you are in full authoritative control of the conversation, and can continue on with your selling process and consulting process. Literally at that point, the competition is who's presenting features, advantages, and benefits. They're experiencing, glossed over eyes from the buyer because they're checked out. They're already thinking about the tangible value that can be driven to the business.
Yeah, it's funny you say that about the glossed over eyes and whatnot. I was talking to the head of a large insurance brokerage here in Chicago, and he actually had said to us that he had a vendor come in that he literally laid it right out for her within the first couple minutes and said, "Hey, here's the things I want to talk about," and she literally said, "That's great. We'll talk about those," and ignored it and went into some type of feature and benefit presentation. And he admitted to me that after about 2 minutes, he stopped listening.
Yeah.
And continued the conversation, right? The conversation continued for an hour, but within 3 minutes of that conversation starting, it was already over, and she didn't realize it.
Yeah, I think you nailed it on the head, and I think that I think we're all guilty of it as sellers, right? But I think you can get to the point where you can assess quickly, am I in control of this conversation or not, and be self-aware about it. And if you're not, keep pushing to be. And if you're not able to, just cut the meeting short and walk away and say, look, like, I just get a feeling we're not a good fit for each other. And oftentimes even the pull away is what will get somebody's attention. I think a lot of times as sellers, we just get into this repetitive motion. I got my deck, I got my process, I got my meeting. My sales managers, got this repeated call sheet and process. And, when we do our sales meetings every week, it's the same analytics and the same process and X amount of appointments. And the reality is that the quality and the context oftentimes, because these types of skills aren't really taught as much in selling nowadays, just get kind of passed up. And, we hear from people all the time that, there's just something. You hear feedback like there's just something different about your organization. We really felt you guys understood what we're trying to accomplish. And it really is just digging in and creating that tension that positions the conversation, who's in charge, who's being led through the process. And that's just how it works.
Yeah, it's an amazing phenomenon because you become uncommon very quickly in conversations, and you're really competing against common skills, which sets you apart from everybody else.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
So how does this change? So you're talking about setting up the tension in the very beginning of the very first conversation in the beginning. How does that set the tone for the second, third meeting, for when they become a client and you're interacting with them? How does that change or help the dynamic?
It really just establishes leadership, but there's also a maintenance component as well, because customers have multiple stakeholders within an organization. Sometimes there's turnover of decision makers, and so you also have to be able to reestablish that tension. And so it's not an event; it's really a relationship. And so you have to find ways in a selling process or in a customer account management process to inject that type of thought leadership into the conversation. And so it can be something as simple as every 2 weeks picking up the phone and having a 5-minute conversation where you're calling the client back up and saying, hey, like I just saw this news story the other day, and I was thinking that that's probably going to have this type of effect on your business, and we should get together and talk about it. I mean, it's really being proactive and thoughtful, but it's worth it. But then a lot of people don't want to invest the time to kind of nurture customers that way. But what I've found is that maintaining that tension will reduce customer service and operations issues and increase customer satisfaction, because again, you're controlling the conversation and not reacting to how the customer's perceiving your experience. You're actually driving it and maintaining and controlling it. And it helps with expectation management as well. So it really is a maintenance process as well. You have to kind of monitor and keep a pulse and keep a score on, honestly, do I have tension over this relationship still? Do I need to deploy something to be able to add tension? What are those tools that work for me to be able to do that at scale? And And it is something that can be systemized over time. But if you look at the average customer lifetime value and the average number of referrals given per customer, there's a direct correlation between the amount of tension in that relationship and those two numbers.
Yeah, that's great. I appreciate you sharing that, because and there's an undertone here too, which I want to call out for the listeners if they're not hearing it, is that this the term tension here does not necessarily mean something negative. It's a positive thing. Is that right?
It is. I think you nailed it. But I think it really is to simplify it. It's having difficult conversations, and us as a society tends to want to avoid the difficult conversations. But I've learned from mentors early on in business, and learn it more every day, that the person who can have and navigate the most difficult conversations on a consistent basis at scale wins. And that's really what you're doing, is you're developing the art of creating a difficult conversation that you're confident that you can lead to the place where you want it to go.
Awesome. That's great. So, well, Brad, I appreciate your time talking and being on the podcast today about this tension in sales conversations. Why don't you, before we wrap up here, share with everybody how they can get in contact or follow you across anywhere, World Wide Web or anywhere, before we cut out.
Awesome, cool. So yeah, I'm easily findable on Instagram at Brad McCrory, MCCRORY. And I do have a podcast called Get Stuff Done. And so if you want that information, you can text the word 8count, EIGHTCOUNT, to the number 619-432-3124, 619-432-3124. If you text that 8count to that number, you get a link back to actually, you'll be able to click on the link and it'll launch the podcast in Spotify. So it makes it super easy for people.
Awesome. And just so everybody listening or typically watches the show, we're going to be sharing that information that you just heard from Brad in the description and anywhere this is posted. So if you, for some reason, didn't write it down, just take a look around. You'll see it close to this recording, and go follow Brad, because I know I already am on the podcast, and I'm looking forward to listening to him more. So Brad, thanks again for being on, and we appreciate everybody tuning in to this episode of Seize Your Business. My name is Bryan McDonald from OnPurpos Growth, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
Thanks so much for watching our video. If you have any questions, feel free to comment below. Click the subscribe button for new videos every week, and download and review us on iTunes. Visit learn-about-law.com for other legal-related articles and videos. Visit our business podcast and video blog, seizeyourbusiness.com, and visit Making Real Estate Fun for real estate videos and podcasts. Call us at 630-324-6666 for a free consultation.